Picture this. A solitary sentinel against a churning sea, its beam a steadfast slash of light in the dark. The lighthouse.
Hmm.
It's an image that instantly sparks a sense of history and wonder, doesn't it? You can't help but ask, where did these guardians of the coast come from, and what was life really like for the brave souls who tended their flames?
Oh.
Okay, let's really get into this, because for this deep dive, we're navigating the fascinating story of lighthouses, from their surprisingly murky ancient beginnings right up to the demanding lives of 19th century keepers.
And we're putting a special focus on the women, too. Their contributions are often overlooked, but they were so important.
Absolutely.
We have a truly compelling collection of sources to explore this. We'll be looking at historical articles that dig into the earliest known lighthouses, a really fascinating piece highlighting the crucial roles women played as keepers in U.S. national marine sanctuaries.
Right.
And also some detailed accounts outlining the daily grind, the historical context for those 19th century keepers.
Exactly. Our goal today is to, well, cut through the historical haze and bring you some genuinely surprising insights into how these essential navigational aids evolved.
Yeah, give you a shortcut, sort of.
Right, a clear path to understanding a rich chapter of maritime history and the remarkable people who stood watch. So let's set sail right at the beginning. It seems there's been a real resurgence of interest in ancient lighthouses lately. What sparked that?
Well, what's so interesting here is how modern tech is actually helping us understand the ancient world better.
Oh, really?
How so? As Ken Traleby points out, one of the pieces, things like the internet growing up, the digitization of old texts, tools like Google Earth, they basically unlocked this treasure trove of information. Combine that with ongoing archaeology, and we just have a much better shot now at reconsidering what we thought we knew about these very early structures.
Right. So before the big one, the Pharos of Alexandria, what was the general understanding of where lighthouses started? It sounds like it was, well, a bit fuzzy.
Precisely. You look at the classic historical works on lighthouses, Stevenson, Hagen Christie, Zemke, they mention ancient examples, sure, but often just briefly, like an intro.
Okay.
None really gave a satisfying explanation for the origins. It's almost like the Pharaohs, which popped up around 280 BCE, just appeared out of nowhere.
The Pharos.
Huh.
Even the name itself is telling, isn't it?
Yeah.
We still use Pharos sometimes for lighthouse today.
We do. But as Trethewey clarifies, Pharos was actually the name of the island where it was built.
Oh, right.
In ancient languages, Egyptian, Greek, there wasn't really a common specific word for lighthouses like we have. They might say fire tower, but even that wasn't super common.
So the lack of a word before the actual Pharos kind of adds to the mystery of it just showing up.
Exactly. It deepens the enigma of its sudden emergence.
So this incredible feat of ancient engineering just happened. Can we at least get a rough idea of the timeline, when it was built?
We can narrow it down. While the exact year is, debated, Trethewey connects its construction to some key historical moment. Alexander the Great conquering Egypt in 331 BCE, the founding of Alexandria itself, Ptolemy I Soter taking power in 323 BCE, and then Ptolemy II Philadelphus starting his reign around 283 BCE.
Okay, so putting those together.
The construction around 280 BCE fits really neatly within that Hellenistic period, or, the era of Greek influence after Alexander hit Egypt.
Gotcha. And what did this ancient wonder actually look like? We see drawings, but what's based on, actual evidence?
Well, based on underwater archaeology near where they think it stood, we have a reasonably clear picture. It seems to have had three main parts.
Okay.
A really substantial square base. Then above that, an octagonal middle section. And right at the top, a shorter cylindrical bit with an open lantern for the fire.
An octagon in the middle. That's a very specific shape. Why an octagon? Was there a reason?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. Trethewey suggests the octagonal shape was probably directly linked to how ancient sailors understood wind direction.
Even without a compass.
Exactly. Even before physical compasses were common, they knew the 8 main wind directions really well. Think about the Tower of the Winds in Athens that shows how they thought about those 8 points.
Oh, okay.
So it's highly likely the Pharos' middle section was deliberately designed to mirror this fundamental part of their navigation. It's this cool link between the building itself and practical seafaring.
That's a real aha moment, the structure echoing the mariner's world. But thinking about what came before the Pharos, this was clearly a huge leap forward. Surely there must have been some earlier, maybe simpler forms of lighthouses?
That's the key question, right? And the surprising answer is, well, Solid archaeological evidence for dedicated lighthouse structures before the pharaohs is incredibly rare.
Really?
Yeah. Even though cultures like the Egyptians were sailing loads, we just haven't found clear examples of purpose-built lighthouse towers from before that Hellenistic period.
That's unexpected. So if they didn't have lighthouses as such, how did early sailors manage at night? Did they just not sail after dark?
Not necessarily. Trethewey suggests maybe we should think about the function of lighthouses. Providing a visible light maybe that was done in other ways.
How so?
Think about the earliest settlements along the Nile. They probably needed some kind of navigation aid, even a really basic one.
Okay, so maybe not towers, but
Yeah,
something else giving off light.
exactly. And one really compelling theory ties into ancient Greek religious practices.
Religion.
Yeah, altars for sacrifices to gods like Poseidon, god of the sea, or Apollo, god of colonists. They were often built on high coastal spots near harbors.
Right, prominent locations.
And these rituals involved fire. So it's totally conceivable that these fires, even if that wasn't their main job, could have acted as temporary guides for sailors.
Huh.
And remember, they thought a statue of Zeus was actually on top of the Pharos itself. That just underlines how important the religious connection was.
That makes a lot of sense, a light for both the earthly and spiritual journey. Are there specific examples of these potential early aids? Places we can point to?
Definitely. The Temple of Poseidon at Cape Sunion, built back in the 5th century BCE, though the site was sacred even earlier, that's a prime example. It's way up high, strategically placed. It would have been a super clear visual marker for ships coming into or leaving Athens. Now, it wasn't a lighthouse, but its visibility, maybe boosted by ritual fires,
Yeah.
that would have been a big help for navigation.
Interesting. Temples doing double duty as landmarks. What about even earlier, before these big temples?
Going further back, Trethewey mentions the Sigeum Pillar near Troy. This might date to around 1250 BCE, Trojan War times.
Wow, okay.
Now, some of it might be legend, but the idea of a memorial to Achilles, maybe with an eternal flame, right there at a crucial spot for sea traffic controlling access to the Hellespont.
Yeah, that's
Even if unintentional, it could have basically served as an early kind of lighted guide.
a hero's memorial accidentally guiding ships. That's a wild thought. And what about the Phoenicians? They were famous ancient sailors. Surely they had something.
Oh yeah, the Phoenicians, masters of the sea, traders,
Yeah.
based out of places like Byblos, Sidon, Tyre. The key thing with them is their practice of setting up sacred altars and temples to their god in Alcart, often identified with the Greek Heracles wherever they settle.
Okay.
Think about Goids. Modern Cadiz, founded way back, maybe 1104 BCE. These sacred spots could definitely have acted as occasional markers for their ships.
So similar to the Greek altars again, religious sites may be helping out with navigation.
Pretty much. There's another possible example, the Phoenician temple of Ras Il Wardisha on Gozo, near Malta.
Mhm.
It's in a really strategic spot overlooking a busy shipping area, and there's even evidence of a potential fire site there. So maybe it was used as a lighted aid tied into the Melkart worship.
And it sounds like there's even more recent evidence popping up.
Yes, quite recently, actually. At Capogallia in Sicily, they found 3 megaliths, big stones with alignments pointing towards the islands of Ustica and Lipari. The current thinking is that the Phoenicians, or maybe even people from the Bronze Age before them, might have used these stones as day markers and maybe lit fires on them at night. It's a really active area of research.
It really is incredible to think about how early sailors found their way. Okay, so we've explored these ancient routes, these maybe sort of early lights, and then the boom of the pharaohs. Let's jump forward now to the more familiar lighthouse era and the people running them. When did lighthouse keepers become like a real job?
Well, in the U.S., the first official lighthouse was the Boston Harbor Light, built way back in 1716.
Okay.
And over time, the whole system evolved. There was the U.S. Lighthouse Establishment, then the Lighthouse Board, the Lighthouse Service. Eventually, it all got rolled into the Coast Guard in 1939.
And the image we often have of a keeper is this solitary, maybe kind of romantic figure battling the waves. But it sounds like the day-to-day was pretty different.
Oh, completely. That romantic idea often glosses over the reality. Lighthouse keeping was tough work, often really isolated, definitely messy, dirty sometimes.
Yeah.
And it could be genuinely dangerous. Plus, it wasn't always. Solitary families often lived right there in the lighthouse with the keeper.
Right. And this is where the vital role of women really comes into the picture, doesn't it? It wasn't just men up in those towers.
Exactly. Women played an absolutely crucial, indispensable role. So often, if the male keeper got sick or injured or even died, his wife or daughter or sister would just step up and take over keeping the light going. And in lots of cases, these women were later officially appointed as keepers themselves.
That's amazing.
It really was. It kept the lights burning, obviously, but it was also vital economic support for families when women didn't have many ways to earn a living.
Mm.
These women were incredibly tough, resourceful, dedicated.
We absolutely need to hear some of their stories. The article we looked at highlights some truly inspiring women. Let's start with Elizabeth Whitney Williams in Michigan.
Elizabeth Whitney Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah, her story links to 2 lighthouses on Lake Michigan. Her first husband got the caper job at Beaver Island Harbor Light in 1869. But pretty quickly, by the next year, his health was failing.
Oh, dear.
So Elizabeth was already basically running the light. Then, tragically, he was lost at sea in '72 trying to help another boat.
Wow.
Despite being devastated, she found comfort staying there, and she was officially made keeper later that year. And what's really interesting is, when she remarried later, she kept her job. That was pretty unusual back then.
Definitely.
Later on, she moved to the new Little Traverse Lighthouse
Mm-hmm.
and stayed there until she retired in 1913. Her autobiography. It just beautifully captures her deep connection to the lake, the peace she found there.
That final quote from her book is so powerful. It really gives you a sense of it. Okay, next up, Anna Garrity at Presque Isle Lighthouse on Lake Huron. Sounds like she was practically born into the service.
Pretty much. Her dad was a keeper. She grew up at the new Presque Isle Light, learned the ropes from day one. Her 3 brothers also became keepers, and both Anna and her mom served as assistant keepers. Then in 1903, Anna became the head keeper of the Presque Isle Harbor Range Light. She served through injuries, forest fires, all the usual isolation challenges, right up until 1926. Her whole life was those lights.
Talk about a family business. And then we have Rebecca and Abigail Bates, the American Army of Two, situate in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Their story from the War of 1812 is just incredible.
It really is something. They were alone at the Situate Lighthouse, saw British warships launching boats to attack the town.
Oh, my goodness.
No time to get the militia. So they just grabbed a fife and a drum and started playing like mad.
No way.
Yep. The British soldiers heard it, thought the town was ready for them, and retreated. Their quick thinking, their courage, it earned them that nickname and probably saved the town.
That's just amazing, using music as a weapon. Wow. Okay, we also have Venus Parker at Killick Shoal Light in Virginia. Her story is important for another reason, too.
Yes. Venus Parker was married to William Major Parker. He's thought to be the first black lighthouse keeper in the U.S., and he faced a lot of prejudice. After William died in 1912, Venus took over, keeping the Killick Shoal Light for several months. There are even stories of her waving to ferry passengers going by. Her story is just a vital reminder of the diverse people who kept these lights burning.
Absolutely. And Rebecca Flaherty at Sand Key Light in Florida. Sounds like her first posting was tough.
It really was. She was first out in the dry Tortugas, much more remote, and she wrote about how lonely and harsh it was. She was happier when her husband got moved to Sand Key, but then he got sick and died. Rebecca just stepped right in, took over his duties, and was officially appointed keeper in 1830. But then, well, it's coming then. She lost the job when she remarried.
Right. Then there's Laura Hecox in California, Santa Cruz Lighthouse. She was keeper for 33 years.
Laura Hecox literally grew up in the Santa Cruz Lighthouse, developed this deep love for the sea, became keeper in 1883, served over 3 decades.
Amazing.
And she wasn't just a keeper. She was a dedicated naturalist, made real contributions to understanding the local marine life. There's a cove named after her nearby.
Oh, cool.
And her collections actually formed the basis of the Santa Cruz Museum of Natural History.
Wow, quite a legacy. And Julia Williams, Santa Barbara Light, California, 50 years of service. Half a century.
Julia Williams's dedication is just astounding.
Yeah.
10 years as assistant keeper with her husband, then 40 more years as the official keeper.
Unbelievable.
Raising 5 kids there, dealing with unpredictable supplies.
Yeah.
She kept that light burning faithfully until she was 81. She became a bit of a local celebrity in her later years. And her quote about never having time to grow old, just perfect.
We also can't forget Ida Wally Lewis, probably the most famous female keeper in the U.S., right?
Oh, absolutely. Ida Wally Lewis at Lime Rock Light in Rhode Island. She became famous nationwide for her rescues. She's credited with saving at least 18 lives from the really dangerous waters around there. Served over 50 years, too. Got the Gold Life-Saving Medal. President Grant even visited her. She was a genuine hero.
And Maria de los Dolores Mastrandra, San Agustin Lighthouse, another important first.
Yes, Maria Andreu, a real pioneer, the first Hispanic-American woman to be a lighthouse keeper in the U.S. She took over at San Agustin Light after her husband died in 1859 and kept serving right through the Civil War.
Wow.
The Coast Guard recognizes her as the first Hispanic-American woman to command a federal shore installation. It's fantastic.
These stories really shine a light, pardon the pun, on the vital role women played. It was clearly a tough job for anyone. What did a typical day look like for a 19th century keeper?
Well, before electricity, it was incredibly hands-on, relentless work. Like the duties of a 19th century lighthouse keeper source lays out. Well before sunset every day, the keeper had to start the process.
Okay, what did that involve?
First, meticulously take off the protective cover from the lens. Open any drapes on the windows. Carefully check the lamp, usually oil-fueled back then, light it. Then wind up and start the clockwork mechanism that turned the lens.
Right, the rotation.
Exactly. And then you had to keep a constant watch over it, especially if the weather turned bad.
And it wasn't just about turning it on, right? Turning it off was a whole process, too.
Yeah. After sunrise, stop the clockwork, put out the lamp, carefully refill the oil tanks, and then the really meticulous part, cleaning and polishing the lens, had to be spotless.
I bet. Those lenses are intricate.
Totally. Then cover the lens back up to protect it from dust and sun, and do regular maintenance on the clockwork, polish all the brass fittings.
And on top of the light itself, there was a surprising amount of paperwork, wasn't there?
Yeah, loads. Record keeping was vital. Keepers had to do regular weather and tide surveys, write everything down daily in the station logbook, keep detailed books for expenses and accounts,
So they were part scientist, part accountant?
and then prepare and send off monthly, quarterly, and annual reports to the Lighthouse Board. It's a lot.
Wow. What else was on the list? Besides the light and the books.
Oh, the list was long. General upkeep of the tower itself, the living quarters, the grounds around it, making repairs, keeping track of all the supplies, inventorying everything,
Okay.
conducting tours for inspectors or other official visitors,
Right.
wearing the official uniform that came in around 1883, and being constantly ready for fire buckets, fire drills.
Makes sense in an oil-fueled tower.
Exactly. And of course, a huge part of the job was helping any ships that got into trouble nearby. It was a truly multifaceted role.
It sounds incredibly demanding. We even saw pictures of some of the tools, fire buckets, special oil cans, even rouge powder for polishing the lens, and the uniforms definitely add that official touch.
They were absolutely vital figures for safety at sea. The uniforms reflected that importance.
Speaking of the light, it obviously changed a lot technologically over the years. What were the big steps?
Well, as sources like the History of the Lighthouse show, it started basic.
Oh.
Open fires, then maybe coal, candles, later spider lamps, which were a bit better.
Right.
A big improvement was the parabolic reflector in the 1700s that really focused the light better. Then the argand lamp came along, much brighter and steadier than a candle.
Okay.
But the real game changer was combining the argand lamp with the Fresnel lens. That lens, with all its prisms, could focus light into an incredibly powerful, far-reaching beam.
The Fresnel lens, right. Iconic.
Totally. Then eventually kerosene became standard, much safer than earlier oils. And finally electricity started coming in, though later in some places like Ireland, maybe the 1930s.
Yeah.
Now, lighthouses even host things like AIS automatic identification systems for tracking ships.
It's amazing that whole journey from a simple fire to sophisticated optics and electronics. We also saw a note about using wood in early lighthouses. I always picture stone towers.
Yeah, stone or brick became the standard for durability, definitely. But wood was used, especially early on. Though, as the wood phrenology source points out, coal was usually preferred for the fire itself. It was more efficient than a wood fire.
Right, needed less fuel.
Exactly. Wooden towers did exist, but they were obviously way more vulnerable to fire storms. But wood was sometimes useful for smaller leading lights because you could actually move them if the shipping channel shifted.
Huh, clever. So lighthouses have definitely come a long way, tech-wise, which I guess leads us to the decline of the resident keeper. When did automation really start taking over?
According to that Wikipedia entry on Lighthouse Keeper, the big shift really started in the 1960s. Electrification, automation. The tech just got better and better. Over the second half of the 20th century, it just became more and more possible for lighthouses to run effectively without someone living there full-time, at least in many spots.
So what's the situation now around the world? Are there any manned lighthouses left?
It really varies a lot. Canada still has quite a few staffed ones, often in remote areas for operational reasons, or sometimes even, sovereignty claims.
Interesting.
In the U.S., the last civilian keeper died back in 2003. Boston Light still has volunteer guides, keeping the history alive, but it's not officially manned. Mexico still has a fair number staffed.
Okay.
South America, you'll find some staff lights in Brazil, Chile. Europe is mostly automated now, but there are a few exceptions. France, Italy, Netherlands, maybe, where some are kept staffed for training or historical reasons.
And the UK?
UK and Ireland, they finished most automation in the 90s. The very last manned light in England went automatic in 1998. Any keepers left today mostly do technical maintenance, not the old daily routine.
It's such a huge change from those demanding routines we talked about earlier. But even though automation's taken over, that image of the lighthouse keeper, it still really resonates culturally, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Like that Wikipedia entry mentions, the keeper is this recurring figure in books, art, often symbolizing adventure, mystery, isolation, sometimes heroism.
Yeah.
Think Jules Verne, Edgar Allan Poe, even that old song, The Eddystone Light. The lone keeper against the storm. It's captured people's imaginations for ages.
And their work is still remembered in concrete ways today.
Yes, it's really fitting that the U.S. Coast Guard, which runs the lighthouses now, names its coastal buoy tenders after famous keepers, men and women. It's a great way to honor that legacy.
So as our deep dive wraps up, we've journeyed through this long, fascinating history. From those very first, maybe accidental lights right up to the automated beacons of today.
Yeah.
And we've really tried to highlight the incredible dedication of the people, the men and the women, who for centuries just faithfully kept those crucial lights burning.
And understanding that history, hearing those personal stories, it gives you a much deeper appreciation for maritime history, for how vital these places were for so long.
Absolutely. And it really does make you wonder, with all the amazing technology and automation now, what aspects of our connection to the sea, to navigation, have maybe been gained or perhaps subtly lost now that the resident lighthouse keeper is mostly gone? Definitely something for you to think about, maybe dig into.